Hello and welcome everyone to the very first episode of my new series, My Version of the Truth. Like many of you guys, I don't always accept things and ideas the way they are without challenging them and giving them enough thinking, especially those kind of ideas that shape the way I think about life and those ideas that dictate my lifestyle. In this series, I will try to share with you my conclusion regarding some of those ideas, in the hope that it might be useful for some of you. Of course, I don't expect all of you to be convinced about my conclusions. This is not my intention. Think of this like an invitation for you to go and search and find your own answers for those important questions, because, like me, you only got one life, and if those ideas and those thoughts are controlling and dictating your lifestyle, the way you live this one life, it's very important to think about them and giving them enough thinking. That's it. Let's start with the first and most important of those ideas. Let's try together to find an answer to this question. Is there someone behind the creation and the existence of this universe? Or to put it in a more fancy words, is there a conscious entity behind the creation of the universe? I'm not thinking about God now, in the sense of God as a divine entity that requires worshipping and obedience. This is not what I'm trying to solve in this episode. I'm just trying to find out, did someone created this universe, or it just existed, as some say? Okay, that's it. Let's get started. Why it's becoming too difficult to answer this question these days. Throughout the history, empirical science domains were a bit limited, and scientists didn't have anything to say regarding things like human social interactions, like friendship or love, or what we consider moral or not, things like that. And societies always relied on religion and philosophy to answer this sort of questions. In this era, though, the domain of empirical science massively expanded, and science started to have opinions on these things, and sometimes rather controversial opinions. I don't really have a side here. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it is very important to understand that science, even science, has its own limitations. Because the empirical science, which is what we call science now, basically, is simply a tool, a measurement tool, that measures what people has to say about the universe and categorizes their sayings into 4 different categories. So what are those 4 categories? The first category is myths. And the myth is something like, for example, the earth is flat. That's a myth. Science will say that's a myth. We know for a fact that Earth is not flat. The other category is facts, and this is something like sun rises from the east, for example. Science will say that's a fact. We know for a fact that sun rises from the east. And the third category is theories, something like the Darwinian evolution or something. Science will say, okay, you seem to have a strong enough empirical evidence of what you are saying, so we will let you go with it until we know for a fact if this a myth or a fact. And the fourth category is hypothesis. And this is something like, for example, there are multiple parallel universes to our universe. And science will say, I don't have an opinion there. You don't have a proof, an empirical proof that what you are saying is true, and I can't prove that what you are saying is wrong, so I basically don't have an opinion, right? And in the matter of the creator, science will simply say the following. If you are talking about a creator that likes to take matters with his own hands, and goes and creates everything with his own hand, we would say this is a myth. According to science, this is a myth. Because we know for a fact that the universe is pretty much autonomous, right? It's operating according to a very specific rules, like clockwork. They never miss, very precise. And it's very autonomous. So you can't say that someone is playing around and creating everything with his own hands, because this doesn't happen. But if you are talking about a creator, a more forward-thinking creator, if you have to say, that decided to just create an autonomous machine and set aside watching, in this case, though, we don't have anything to say as science. We don't know. Because this creation, whatever this creator did, happened before time starts. And science doesn't have anything to say before time starts. Because this is where the record starts. We don't have any record of anything happened before time. Right? So, if science wouldn't be able to provide a conclusive answer to this question, an answer that can be considered a scientific fact, or even a theory, what should we do? Well, some people, as I said, believe in science. Science for them is not a tool, it's a belief system. And like any belief system, it doesn't answer all questions, and believers need to accept this and live with it. But personally, I don't consider myself a believer in science. Well, I use science. I believe science. Science is always my first destination to find answers. There is no doubt about this. But I am aware of the limitations of science, and whenever it can't provide an answer, I just go and seek an answer somewhere else. I don't stick with it. And in the matter of the creator, I actually found my answer right next door. At science's biggest brother, reason. And reason is nothing more than simulating how the human brain works. What the human brain do is, it learns, and it tries to find patterns on the thing that it learned. And going forward, when it encounters a new situation, it tries to find similarities between those patterns and understand the new events in the light of what it knows. Or simply, it uses the information about what it knows to understand what it doesn't know. So, let's consider a smaller problem, like a case study, and try to analyze it. Imagine that you encountered a machine, a fairly sophisticated machine, a car production line, for example. And while you are observing this machine, you came to know some things about it. First, the machine is completely autonomous. You don't see any human intervention on its operation. Second, the machine can mend itself, actually. Oh, and it's also growing itself. It can now build cars and motorcycles. But unfortunately, whoever built this machine didn't leave any track to him. Maybe it wasn't built by a human. Maybe another machine built it, and another one built that builder machine, and so on and so on. But that makes matters even more complex. I mean, the longer the domino line is, the more complex to create, right? So on the scale of this simple example, the question became so much easier to answer, right? Remember, we are not trying to figure out exactly the exact identity of whoever created this machine. Our job is much simpler than this. We just want to know if he is 1. A toddler with a pen and a pile of papers. 2. Nothing. 3. Someone who knew what he was doing. This is what we are trying to answer. So, what do you think? So, obviously I believe there is a creator for this universe, And this is the conclusion that I reached. And this was my chain of thoughts. Thank you very much, guys, for sticking around up until the end. And I hope this video was useful to you. And see you guys in the next video. Peace.